Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. It is May 1st, 2020 for our weekly update on the effects of the coronavirus on Canadian immigration, presented as usual by Visto and SMB Business Immigration. Let's get into the agenda really quickly. We'll do a very brief intro just on who Sonia and I am. We're going to talk a little bit about the updates for individuals and travel. That'll mostly, I'll kind of cover a lot of that topic. Sonia will then go into more detail on some other considerations, especially for companies. We will, of course, then be sticking around for a live Q&A. I'm keeping an eye on the Facebook chat, so if you do have questions during, feel free to post them into the chat. We'll probably get to them at the end. We won't be talking for more than about 10-15 minutes, and then we're happy to spend as long as needed on the Q&A. So really quickly, who we are, if this is your first time tuning in on the update, we do this every Friday at noon. My name is Josh Schachnow. I'm an immigration lawyer and CEO of Visto at visto.ai. It is a free platform for skilled workers and international students who need help with immigration in Canada. Sonia, of course, is the principal partner of SMB Business Law. You can check out her practice at smblaw.ca, primarily working with a lot of Canadian employers and skilled workers as well from around the world. Really quick disclaimer, this is for general information purposes only, so there's no kind of lawyer-client relationship or any of that good stuff. We do have to put that quick caveat out there. And really quickly, before we get into the content itself, for our previous updates, we have two things that you should definitely check out. Number one is our special measures Google Doc. I will post this in the chat as soon as I'm done talking and I hand it over to Sonia. But basically every week after our discussion, I update our Google Doc, which has all the links and all the information on what you need to know about travel, immigration, company considerations, all that good stuff. As well, we take this live video, we throw it up on YouTube. So I'll link to the YouTube channel where you can find previous updates as well. All right, admin stuff is out of the way. Let's get on to the weekly updates. So I'm going to touch on some updates regarding application processing to begin with. So this will be in regards to study permits, work permits, and express entry. So for study permits right now, very difficult to get one, if at all, right, Sonia, for two reasons. Number one is you need a university or college approval letter, and getting one of those can be very difficult right now because a lot of Canadian universities and colleges aren't sure what their programs are even going to be looking like starting in September. A lot of them have pushed back intake into January. If you have a study permit that was approved after March 18th, you're also not on the travel exemption list, meaning you're not even allowed to travel into Canada. So if study permit is the focus right now, you may want to be planning a little bit more around that, but not actually pulling the trigger for the time being, as they're still not allowed traveling into Canada, and getting that approval letter may even be difficult in and of itself. Work permits still being processed as per usual. So if you're looking to become a temporary foreign worker, or as Sonia will discuss, looking to hire temporary foreign workers, the work permits are still being processed, and there are still travel exemptions for work permit holders. So that process pretty much the same as usual, with the exception of there may be some processing delays due to COVID. Lastly, express entry. And so that is the skilled worker PR application. These are still being processed, but what we've seen in the last about 2 to 4 weeks is Immigration Canada is only doing draws for those that are within Canada, either through the CEC program, so Canadian Experience Class, or someone who has a PNP nomination. So if you're abroad and you don't have a PNP nomination, or you're not in line for getting a PNP nomination, it may be difficult to get invited to apply through express entry for the time being. Now, this is just based on the last couple weeks, kind of what we're seeing, right? All of the draws have focused either on CEC applicants or PNP nominees. So that's what we've seen from the last few weeks. We'll, of course, keep you updated if that changes. But that is what Canada is focused on targeting right now for express entry. I'm going to touch again quickly on new guidance on what's required on landing. So I talked a little bit in more detail on this last week, so I recommend checking out that video for more details, or just check the Google document because we have all the details in there. But basically, there are much higher expectations on landing for new immigrants, whether you're actually an immigrant or not, right? Whether you're coming on a work permit, whether you're a citizen, anything like that. If you're coming back into Canada or coming here for the first time, you need to have a plan in place for a mandatory 14-day quarantine. That includes knowing where you're going to live, how you're going to get there, who's going to be providing you with food, all of that good stuff. So if you or anyone you know is planning on traveling to Canada anytime soon, definitely check out the Google document and all of the instructions in there. Lastly, a quick mention on the postgrad work permit is that a lot of schools obviously have had to move to online courses. Immigration Canada is okay with that in terms of your postgrad work permit eligibility, as long as it doesn't lead to you taking more than 50% of your course online. So if you are stuck at home, maybe you're starting your program in May or June, and you're staying at home and starting it online, that's no problem. It likely will not have any effect on your postgrad work permit. Just keep in mind you do have to complete at least half of your program at the university in Canada in order to maintain that postgrad work permit eligibility. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Sonia, who's going to do a little bit of talking about some other considerations, especially around companies located in Canada. Sonia, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. So, hello everyone. I hope everyone's healthy and safe, first of all. Second of all, when it comes to updates about, LMIAs and, what the company obligations are these days, I touched upon the new regime, compliance regime that came into place last week, just before our event, from Service Canada on employers. And I'm just going to be elaborating a little bit more on that because that's becoming really big for employers these days. So Service Canada is essentially, pulling the trigger and is being pretty strict on employers with respect to the ones that are having, foreign workers, sponsored foreign workers or foreign nationals in Canada, with respect to making sure that the foreign nationals are not being manipulated or not being abused during that 14-day isolation period, mandatory isolation period. So what that means is that employers are essentially required to pay at least 30 hours, equivalent to 30 hours of work per week for the employees, and the employees are not required to work within that period of time. Service Canada is essentially carrying on these inspections on a virtual basis or remote basis. Inspections always has been part of the Service Canada program, but they used to be very random on employers. Nowadays, it seems like they're being pretty strict on this, and there are a couple of factors that can sort of triggers these inspections. So what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that if there's a spread of COVID among workers in the workplace, that's essentially one of the main trigger factors for Service Canada to start auditing or start inspecting that employer. And the second factor is the foreign nationals. If Service Canada become aware that the foreign national hasn't really complied with the 14-day isolation period, that also considers one of the trigger factors to start inspecting the employer. So what happens is that employers are asked specifically by Service Canada to notify them as soon as a foreign worker comes to Canada, and that's essentially for the foreign workers that are coming under LMIA, Labor Market Impact Assessment. So that's how Service Canada knows that the person is in Canada right now. And also for the LMIA exempt, foreign workers that are coming to Canada at the border, once they're passing the border, or I guess the borders are not issuing any work permit at this point anymore, but once they're coming, they're sort of getting registered that, this foreign national landed in Canada under the work permit and such date. And that's, it looks like IRCC and Service Canada are sort of collaborating on this so that Service Canada becomes aware of how many people are coming working in Canada and who are the employers. And that's essentially for closed work permits, I would say, where, the name of the employer is on the work permit and the employee is asked to work only for that employer. So these are the trigger factors. Service Canada wants to make sure, so there are a few things that they're looking for, really. I mean, the result of the inspection is not really going to, it's nothing like the audit, it's nothing like the review, the 12-month review that they usually do. Their purpose is really to make sure that the employees getting paid during that 14-day isolation period. So wages are the main factors, are the main factor, and also they want to make sure that the public health is being preserved, and the person is not really going to work or being away or in quarantine and not really meeting anybody per se. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, nobody can meet anybody these days. Everybody has to be quarantined, but even getting out of the house is sort of not happening for those people. So these are essentially two factors that Service Canada is looking for when it comes to inspection. Now, dependents, family members. So that's big. We've been talking about family members, what's the definition of dependent family member from the very beginning when we started these updates. And it looks like it's sort of constantly changing. So is every other thing. Now, dependent family members are, I'll be very quick, and Josh, correct me if I'm missing something, are their spouses, common law partners, parents, in-laws, guardians, and children of the main applicant. And so what happens is that to better understand this, we would probably have to sort of look at family member dependents that are coming from US as opposed to the rest of the world. So people that are coming from US, if you remember, for those of you who were following us, I mentioned before that there is an authorization letter that needs to be granted from IRCC for the visa holder, the dependent family members that are visa holders and are coming to Canada, in order to make sure that, or to provide evidence that they're reuniting with their family member in Canada, and so they are exempted from the travel ban. Now, in terms of people, dependents that are coming from US, the authorization is not required per se, but they still have to convince the CBSA officer at the border that they're meeting the optional discretionary sort of, I lost the word.
Testing or
Test.
reasoning?
There you go. That's the word. That's the word. Thank you. So
it's a Friday,
what it means
Sonia.
is that, I know. So what it means is that they have to show that their entry into Canada is not optional and not discretionary. So essentially, they're not coming for spending holidays in Canada, or they're not coming to visit, Toronto and CN Tower. They're coming to reunite with the main applicant, or the family member who's a worker, PR of Canada, holding a PR of Canada, or a citizen of Canada. So the authorization is not needed from people coming from US. However, if you're coming from any other part of the world, the authorization is required. And as we sort of backdate to our conversation from last week, I always advise my clients, and I've told that, I guess, in the event, that I always advise my clients these days that, the main applicant or the main worker land in Canada first, and the dependent family members join later, to have this argument that family members are coming to reunite with the main applicant. If they all come together, there's no argument for reunification, and they're essentially, or the family members essentially might be turned back to their home countries. So again, going back to my conversation, for people that are coming from anywhere in the world other than US, the dependent family members that are visa holders, they would have to apply for, so the main applicant has to land in Canada first, who's the worker, and the dependent family members have to apply for authorization, special authorization from immigration, to prove that they're exempted from the travel ban, and with that authorization, they'll be able to travel to Canada. Now, again, I think I touched upon that last week as well. There are two levels of organizations that are, dealing with the paperwork and making sure that people are really exempted from the travel ban. One, the frontliners are the airline staff. They will check all the documents, all the authorizations, anything that's needed from the person, just to make sure that this person is allowed to get on a plane and enter Canada. The second line of people would be Canada Border Service agency officers for the people that are landing in Canada. So you want to make sure that I guess it gets a little complicated. I hear from my own clients that they get confused. Things are constantly changing, and they're sort of every day there's immigration is introducing new sort of new set of rules or new set of documents that's needed to come to Canada. So I guess I understand it, and for anybody who wants to travel to Canada, if they don't know what documents need to be prepared, you're more than welcome to contact me, and I'll let you know exactly what needs to be done. In the absence of proper documentation, you would probably not even be able to get boarded on the airline. So I guess that's about it. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to also mention is that when all these travel restrictions came into force, it was very clear that people that are, the guidelines were clear from IRCC that people that are coming from US, if they've been residing in the US for 14 days, they're exempted from the travel ban. But that also had been taken out by the recent order in council that came into place. And I guess Josh has updated that on our live Google document as well. So that also gets eliminated. Whoever that's coming from US is allowed to come to Canada as long as they're workers, or in the case of visitors, as long as they show the optional discretionary test, they pass the optional discretion test at the border. So I leave it at that. I think I covered pretty much everything that I wanted to say for today.
Great, thanks for that, Sonia. The only thing I'll add is, so in the Google Doc itself, we have the full definition of dependent family members. I think you actually did cover all of them, with the exception of dependent children of dependent children. So that would be the only one that I'd also add. But it's all outlined in the Google Docs. Best that people go in there and see the letter of the law either way. But thanks very much for those updates, Sonia. Thanks everybody who did tune in live to listen. We are going to stick around for questions. Of course, if you do need to reach out to either Sonia or I, you can find me at josh@visto.ai, or you can check out the free immigration portal at visto.ai. You can reach out to Sonia at smblaw.ca, and you can check out her website and all of the services her firm provides at smblaw.ca. So thanks everybody for tuning in live. And hopefully we'll also see you next week. And for those that are still here, Sonia and I will be sticking around for another few minutes to answer any questions you may have.